All right, I believe that we are live. We'll just give that kind of little pause to let some listeners log in and catch up with us, and we'll begin introductions just shortly. All right. Well, I think we've got some viewers joining us at this point. Welcome, Star Wars family. Thanks for joining us again for our Star Wars speaker series 2021, the fall. We are on episode 3 this evening. So welcome. If you've joined us for the other 2, thank you so much. If you haven't, they are available for viewing after the fact on our YouTube channel. That is www.youtube.com/the Virtual Cantina Network. And very shortly after the conclusion of this broadcast, you will, if you miss any or you can't join us completely live, you'll be able to see this there as well. So my name is Dave. I am going to be kind of your master of ceremonies for the evening, but not your host. I am here to introduce the hostess with the mostest, Mr. Jonathan Notman. Jonathan is in charge of our speaker series and is the one who gets all the good questions and knows what to ask. And I'll just be sitting back here doing the tech and fielding your questions. So please do ask those in the chat. But Jonathan, I will let you introduce our special guest for the evening, sir.
Thank you, Dave. That's a wonderful introduction. So tonight we have a very special guest. I am so happy that we managed to arrange for this young man to speak to us this evening. I am super excited about this. I know our vast membership out there will be equally excited to get to meet, understand, and get to know this gentleman a little bit more. This is your opportunity to get to ask questions about somebody that worked extensively within the Star Wars franchise. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to a gentleman that I actually met back in August at the San Francisco PopX event. And his name is C. Andrew Nelson, or Andrew. How are you this evening, Andrew? Nice to
greetings from the dark side. How are you? Good to see you guys.
We're great, thank you.
You don't have to bribe me by calling me young, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, like I said a minute ago, I'm really happy that you are part of our speaker series in fall 2021. So, as I said, I know a lot of people are going to be fascinated to hear about your story and to get to know you a little bit better. But before we jump into some questions, I was reading through Andrew's bio, and it makes for fascinating reading. So a little bit about Andrew before we get to know him a little bit better. So Andrew is an award-winning artist. He's an actor, a writer, consultant, and a motivational speaker. Andrew spent 4 years as a visual effects artist at Industrial Light and Magic. His VFX credits at ILM include Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, Galaxy Quest, Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle, The Perfect Storm, there they are, that's the proof, Jurassic Park 3, The Time Machine, Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones. I could go on. Andrew has such an extensive resume, if you like, of his work at ILM. But prior to ILM, Andrew also worked for 6 years at LucasArts Entertainment, where he served as a visual effects supervisor. At LucasArts, he helped create and design such popular games as Dark Forces, Rebel Assault 2, Full Throttle, The Dig, Jedi Knight, Curse of Monkey Island, Masters of Terraskazi, Shadows of the Empire, Rogue Squadron, which is one of my favorite games. So you're like one of my heroes. Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine, and so on and so on. So Andrew has worked extensively with sister companies Lucasfilm, Lucas Learning, Lucas Licensing, and THX. Wow, what a resume. Andrew, that's incredible. So
I know, I'm almost embarrassed by my resume there. So
not at all. Do you know what? One of the things I really liked when I met you, your resume and your work is extensive and so impressive. But one of the reasons I really wanted to invite you along as a speaker in our virtual Cantina speaker series, when I spoke to Andrew recently, he said, "You know what? I was one of those fans. I grew up with Star Wars. I stood the other side of the table and got autographs and got photo opportunities. I just want to give back." And I love that. That really resonated with me. And I thought, wow, this guy would just be such a cool speaker. So that's why we think that, we all wanted to meet you and get to know you a little bit better. So thank you, Andrew, again for
I'm
joining.
glad to be here. That is exactly why I do this. I mean, as I said, I spent many years on the other side of the table at conventions, as a fan, before I was ever invited to sit down on the celebrity side with a stack of photos and a handful of Sharpies. And I never forget that. I keep that in mind all the time.
Well, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
I tell people, I'm an ordinary guy who gets to do extraordinary things, and I don't take it for granted. And so I always feel I've got to give back, which is why after I left ILM, I began teaching visual effects. In fact, I worked on Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. My students ended up working on Revenge of the Sith. So as Vader might say, the circle is now complete.
That's a great legacy. That's a wonderful legacy.
You got to do. You got to give back. Because if you
true.
keep all this stuff for yourself, then you're not going to get to do all these cool things anymore. I'm meant to be a conduit to distribute this incredible blessing to others. So.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. So let's jump right into the questions, if you don't mind. So one of the things I was fascinated, back in 1977, I was an 8-year-old growing up in a backwater town, with an older brother. And I remember hearing a little bit about this movie, this Star Wars movie, a new space adventure. And it sounded kind of cool. On TV in the UK, we didn't really see a lot of trailers as you'd see them these days. It was the short sequences of the Millennium Falcon blasting out of Mos Eisley and the TIE Fighter attack on the Falcon. So anyway, strip it right back. Before you work with LucasArts and ILM, tell us a little about your introduction to the Star Wars universe, growing up as a kid in San Francisco. What was it like to see the movie for the first time? It
was, and a lot of people say this, but for me, it is absolutely true. It was life-changing for me. I actually got interested in the arts and everything like that back when I was 6 years old, when I went to Disneyland for the first time. My mother took me to Disneyland for my 6th birthday, and we drove from the San Francisco Bay Area down to Anaheim to go there. And this would have been 1968. And of course, she, like a fool, she took the longest route down there. She took Highway 1, which is along the coast, and it's taking forever. So of course, she had to put up with, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" from me. And so I just pounded her with that all the way down. And she was trying to describe what Disneyland was like for me, and she couldn't really do it justice. She just kept saying it's like the biggest carnival you've ever seen in your life. And I'm thinking, well, there's a carnival that comes to the local shopping mall every summer. Why are we driving so far? So I'm just going crazy in the car down there. We finally get down there. We check into the hotel. When it's time to go to Disneyland, we hop into the car and we drive in and we park the car, and she finally declares, "All right, we're here." And I look around, and it's a parking lot. It's the largest parking lot I've ever seen in my life. Now, of course, nowadays it's Disney California Adventure, but back then it was a parking lot. And I'm thinking, this is what we drove all this way for? But as she's walking me towards the main entrance, she's dragging me towards the main entrance, I can hear off in the distance the sound of the Disneyland Railroad and the train, the steam engine, and the bell ringing, and the sound of the announcer, "Your attention, please. The Disneyland Limited, now arriving from a grand circle trip around Disneyland." And I'm getting excited. So now I'm meeting up with her pace. Then the monorail goes right over my head. And now I'm outpacing her, and I'm dragging her towards the main entrance. We step out onto Main Street, and it's like everything changed for me at that point. Suddenly it was my artistic awakening. That trip when I was 6 years old, I wanted, at that point, how a lot of kids will buy into the fantasy of a place like Disneyland. They'll, "Oh, this is where Mickey and Minnie live, yay!" I wasn't that kid. I was the kid that knew that this was all make-believe. It was all show. But that fascinated me. And I wanted to know who made this place, how did they make it, and most importantly, how could I do it too? That's when I started drawing. I started learning about everything, and eventually learning animation and visual effects and all that. That led to me to wanting to do stop motion animation, and I wanted to be the next Ray Harryhausen. That was my goal. That was my whole goal in life, was I wanted to be like Ray Harryhausen, who did all these wonderful effects from, Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and Jason and the Argonauts and the original Clash of the Titans. And so I wanted to be the next Ray Harryhausen. Until the summer of '77, when I'm standing in line to see this obscure little science fiction film called Star Wars. Nobody's ever heard of it, I'm sure. But I remember standing in line at the theater, the Coronet Theater in San Francisco on Geary Boulevard, which sadly is gone now. They tore it down. But I stood in line for about 2 hours, this huge long line. That was just to get a ticket. Then you had to stand in an equally long line to actually get into the theater. And I don't know how it happened, divine intervention perhaps, but I think I got the best seat in the house. I certainly wasn't there first in line to try to get it, but I got the best seat in the house. And that opening sequence where the Rebel blockade runner is flying right over your head, followed by that massive Star Destroyer. I just looked up at the screen and I thought to myself, I want to do that for a living. But there was a problem, because there was nowhere to go to learn how to do that for a living, because the guys that were doing that had made that up as they went along. Guys like John Dykstra and Richard Edlund and Dennis Murin. This was all brand new territory, that sort of thing. But I remember it was the very first film I had ever stayed. I was 15 years old, actually just shy of my 15th birthday. And the film had been out for like 3 weeks, so there was all kinds of buzz for it. But I remember it was the very first film I ever stayed to watch the credits for. Because I was one of those kids that just bolted out of the theater as soon as the end, boom, I'm out. So I would have, if it was nowadays, I would miss all the cool Easter eggs at the end of Marvel movies, because I was just bolting out of the theater at that time. But I stayed and I wanted to see who made this movie, and I want to know, how can I track and find some information about them. Of course, we didn't have the internet back then, so I just had to drag my father all around the San Francisco Bay Area, and he drove me everywhere, to every comic book shop, every magazine stand, every bookstore, every library, so I could find some kind of interview, some kind of information, about Star Wars and how they made it. And then I started experimenting. I had a Super 8 film camera, because I was, doing stop motion at the time, and I would start trying to recreate the effects that I saw in the Star Wars films. Sometimes it looked pretty good, most of the time not, but I was still learning and everything. But I remember, before even going to see Star Wars, I had seen the trailer in the cinema. I don't remember what I went to see, but I remember seeing that trailer, because that was what really grabbed my attention. That wonderful trailer. Somewhere in space, this may all be happening right now, and I was like, what is that? It's like, it was like nothing we'd ever seen. My friends and we'd never seen anything like that, but it stuck with me. And so when the film finally came out, it's like, oh yeah, I got to see this thing. But yeah, it just changed everything for me. That was when I got deeply into doing visual effects. I got more into acting. I'd been acting since I was 10 years old. Started off in theater, and then moved into film and television and voiceover and that sort of thing. But I was just determined now that I wanted to do this, and I wanted to work for Lucas. And so it took a while, but I eventually ended up working for Lucas.
That's a great memory. Thanks for sharing that. And I want to share something with you. I only got to see the movie when it was shortly after it was released, because I won a competition. And I had a pair of tickets, mm-hmm. and a blue milk, a packet of powder that you could put into real milk and make it blue. So I remember that. But I also remember, and I've told a lot of our members this story, when I saw the movie, I was 9 years old, and I had a very young sister with me at the time, and my parents. And right as they got into the final, Death Star trench run, finale, if you like, my mother turned to me and said, "Can you take your sister to the bathroom?"
No.
Being mortified right at that scene.
Talk about horrible timing.
Luke Skywalker was about to destroy the Death Star. She asked me if
my gosh, that's like sending somebody to the lobby right when Hercule Poirot is going to tell you who killed who the murderer was.
Yeah, and you talk about that opening sequence with the Star Destroyer and the Rebel blockade runner. I was lucky enough to talk to Lon Peterson in Chicago 2019 at Celebration, and he's amazing. And he told me a wonderful story where he went to the showing of that particular sequence, you know, with the studio execs, George Lucas, etc. And he said he couldn't hear a pin drop in that room, and you could feel the gasp in the room as that, you know, Star Destroyer went over, and they all thought at that time that they were out of jobs. And the gasp wasn't them being like, "Wow, this is horrible." It was just, "This is it. This is amazing." So to see that for the first time, they all kind of, you know, they sunk in their seats thinking.
Impressive to this day. That shot is still so impressive.
It still gives me goosebumps to this day. It is such an amazing sequence. Anyway, so the next question I think you just touched upon one of your inspirations for, you know, work as within the visual effects. So who or what was your inspiration within the movie industry that drew you into working with visual effects? You know, you mentioned Harryhausen a minute ago, but, you know, and I remember those movies growing up, and some of them were terrifying, those little clay models in the stop motion. So tell me a little bit about your inspiration, what drew you into visual effects?
I was always fascinated by it. I think what really fascinated me, it all goes back to Ray. And because Ray was a one-man effects studio. A lot of people don't realize that Ray Harryhausen was under contract to Columbia Pictures the same way that Clark Gable or Betty Davis would have been under contract to MGM or Warner Brothers or something, like, you know, Humphrey Bogart at Warner Brothers. They made films around Ray. I mean, Ray would come up with like a little concept or something, or his producing partner, Charles Schneer, would come up with a concept, and they would build a whole movie around that. He was under contract to them, and so he was a star for them. And Ray was a one-man effects studio. He made his own armatures for, early on his father would machine them, but he made his own armatures for his stop motion figures. He would, you know, sculpt them. He would, you know, paint them. He would build the miniature sets. He was his own cinematographer, lighting his sets and everything. He did his effects in camera, you know, nothing, you know, post-production. He was doing it in camera, all the matte work. And so if you made one little mistake, you had to start over again. But he would work like the Dickens for, like, you know, 3 or 4 months. And then you have the rest of the year off, which, you know, it pleased his wife. But, you know, that was it. And I was just fascinated by that. And I thought, wow, how can I get a gig like that? And I just the films that he did really inspired me. The same year that I saw Star Wars, the original Star Wars, and I still call it Star Wars. I don't call it New Hope that often. I call it Star Wars. Sorry. But the same year that I saw Star Wars was the same year that I met Ray. And you were talking about winning a contest. I won a contest to meet Ray Harryhausen. We had a TV show here in the San Francisco Bay Area and up in Sacramento called Creature Features, hosted by a guy named Bob Wilkins. And when you know, it was a horror show thing that, you know, on the weekends, you get them all over the U.S. Where you know, you got like Svengoolie, and nowadays we've got Mr. Lobo and other with Cinema Insomnia. We've got all these different, you know, wonderful you know, horror show hosts. Well, in the Bay Area and in Sacramento, we had a guy named Bob Wilkins, and instead of playing a character, one of these creepy characters, oh, welcome to the movie tonight, and that Bob, he had this big buildup for the show, and then he was this little diminutive guy, blonde hair, big round, big thick glasses, smoking a huge cigar, sitting in a rocking chair, a yellow rocking chair in this creepy old attic, and he'd just go, "Well, we've got a real stinker of a movie for you tonight. Yeah, you probably shouldn't watch it. In fact, let me get the TV guide. Let's see what else is on. Oh yeah, you should watch this instead." Well, as a teenager, I'm thinking, oh, I got to stick around for this movie. You know, however bad it is, I got to see it. But he was an inspiration for me, and he had a contest on his show when Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, which Ray Harryhausen film, came out the same year as Star Wars. They had a chance to go to a screening at the special screening room where all the critics go to see the movies. And Ray was going to be there. And so I got to meet Ray at this screening of the film, and he had his armatures, the different stop motion figures that he had used in the film. And I remember I'm like 15 years old, and I look up and I'm looking at those things, and he's signing an autograph for me, which I still have. And I'm looking at these figures, and I don't know what possessed me, but I reached out to touch one of them. And then I was like, like that, like, oh my gosh, I just crossed the line here. But Ray just looked at me and he kind of winked and he said, "Go ahead, pick it up." And I started talking to Ray, and he encouraged me. He could tell that I wasn't just like a film fan. I wanted to follow in his footsteps, and he encouraged me to do that. And the host of the show that I was talking about, Bob Wilkins, he encouraged me too to do these things. And so that's what set me in motion. Flash forward years later, because of working on Star Wars, I then began to teach at the Academy of Art University in San Francisco, helping run the visual effects department there. And we actually presented a honorary doctorate to Ray Harryhausen there. So it was so wonderful to be able to do that. And Phil Tippett also, Star Wars artist extraordinaire. So I was able to be a part of that. So that was just an incredible thing. But yeah, he was a big influence for me too. Also, the guys that worked on Star Wars, I mentioned them earlier, like John Dykstra and Dennis Muren and Richard Edlund. These were my heroes. When everybody else was like taking pictures of like Bruce Lee and cutting him out of magazines to put him on their walls because that was their hero, I was taking pictures of Dennis Muren and putting them up on my walls, cutting him out of Starlog magazine. So it was kind of odd when I finally got to ILM, and I was, at the time that I left LucasArts, I was a visual effects supervisor and senior artist there, working on like 5 different games at a time and running a little team of effects artists. And I was essentially like a compositor, you might say. There was an opening at ILM for a rotoscoper. And if you don't know what rotoscoping is, for anybody out there who cares, rotoscopers, their job is sort of twofold. They have to create mats by hand. So, not a process like blue screen or green screen, like you guys are doing right now with your backgrounds there, the sort of where it's doing an automated thing, or this is a hand-drawn mat. So if you think about Photoshop, where you can make a mask around a shape and make a shape there to isolate a certain spot, imagine doing that every single frame to isolate something in the shot. So let's say if you've got a shot where Qui-Gon Jinn is standing there and Obi-Wan is standing there, and you've got to get Jar Jar Binks to walk between the two of them. Well, you've got to take whoever's in the foreground. Let's say Obi-Wan's in the foreground. You've got to trace Obi-Wan's outline every single frame in that footage that was shot, and articulate that mat frame by frame to isolate him and protect him, so that you can slip that other layer in there to get Jar Jar into the shot. The other job of the rotoscoper is digital paint, where you're painting out things that don't need to be in the shots, or painting things in that should have been there and aren't. So if there are tracking markers, if there's safety tethers, and there's wires and rods and things like that in a shot, that all has to disappear afterwards. So the rotoscoper goes in and paints that out and makes it go away. And they also paint in things that should have been in there that weren't. Maybe filling in parts of the background and that sort of thing. So that was where the opening was at ILM, and so I am actually going somewhere with this, trust me. The opening was there. I went in for the interview. I heard what you always want to hear in an interview. They said, well, you're overqualified. You're completely overqualified for this job, but we'd love to offer it to you. And so I got hired into the rotoscoping department, and I was immediately drafted into matte painting. I had never done a matte painting before in my entire life. And at the end of I think my second week at ILM, my first or second week, I am standing at Dennis Muren's desk, and he is reviewing my very first matte painting ever. And I'm just thinking, I'm fangirling out, just inside of me, just thinking, wow, I had photos of you on my wall, and it's like I'm such a nerd. And Dennis is like reviewing my shot, and he's going over the thing, giving me some little tips and everything. And I'm trying not to out loud. Then finally, then he does something I didn't expect. He just goes, well, I don't know. What do you think? I didn't know what to say. Inside, I'm thinking, you've got more Oscars than anybody alive. You tell me. But Dennis was so cool to work for. So one piece of advice that I would give to everybody out there is, there's an old expression that says, never meet your heroes. That's poppycock. Meet your heroes. Meet your heroes. Okay. Most of them turn out to be really cool. And some of them end up being your friends or your colleagues. And those that aren't cool, well, it's a good idea to meet them and burst that bubble so that you don't go walking around with like the wrong idea, the wrong impression of them. But most of them are really cool. And Dennis and Richard Edlund. They're great, and I ended up serving on the board of directors of the Visual Effects Society with Richard Edlund, and just really cool people. So
that's an incredible story.
Those guys were my influences, and then I ended up working with them as their colleague, and it's like, how amazing is that?
Living the dream. What can I say? Do you know my story? I met Dennis. I think it was 2019, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I met him briefly in Los Angeles, and fortunately I managed to scrabble something together and get an autograph. But
Mm-hmm.
I chatted to him briefly, and he did one of those things I think is sometimes a sin in the movie industry. It's like, which was one? Well, could you name a couple of your favorite movies that you worked on? And he straight out of the gate said it was this, this, and this in that order. And I was shocked because, you know, to guys like you, all of them are wonderful because they're like your babies. You work on them, and part of you is invested into that movie. So for him to say that to me was a little shocking, but great to hear. And I also talked to him about his role. I know we're talking mainly Star Wars content tonight, but to talk about his role, that little cameo that he has in Raiders of the Lost Ark was just such a cool thing to talk to him about. And it was a very similar thing. Well, I fit a certain height and stature as a sinister Nazi that was tailing him.
Right.
And he just said, throw the coat on, throw the hat on, you could do it. It just happenstance. So that was great. So thank you for that. And you know, one other thing I wanted to ask you. So apart from Dennis, was there anybody else at ILM that you worked on that you really enjoyed working with? You know, what you could say that the time you spent with them was just amazing and changed your life, apart from Dennis Muren?
Oh gosh, there's so many. I mean, it's an amazing thing. All along the way, you've got mentors, you've got colleagues, you've got friends that you make. I mean, the teams that we had at ILM were amazing. The teams we had at LucasArts were amazing. The team we had at Skywalker Ranch to put together all this stuff for character appearances and playing Vader and everything were amazing as well. One of the coolest guys that I ever have had a chance to work with and meet and become friends with is Don Bees. Don Bees from the ILM Model Shop and everything, and he was my original Vader Wrangler and everything. Don is a wonderful, warm human being, absolutely fantastic gentleman, and I just can't say enough good things about him.
Hi, Don.
Don's watching tonight. That's why I'm saying. So he's watching this. So that's why I've been waiting to do that. So no, there's so many amazing things. And then George, I can't leave George out. My gosh, sitting in dailies with George is an amazing experience. The funny thing is about George, he's not the actor's director. It's not a joke. When he says, the old line of George's directing style is faster, more intense, more, bigger. That's his directing style.
You can write this stuff, but you can't say it.
Yes, exactly. Yes. But when it comes down to the visuals, my gosh, that man knows his stuff. I can remember sitting in dailies one time on Attack of the Clone. No, excuse me, on Phantom Menace. And there was a shot where Jar Jar walks up out of the swamp, and he walks behind some trees, and then he meets up with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan. And it was a panning shot. So the live action background plate is panning, from side to side, following where Jar Jar would be. But there was a hesitation in the pan. It was like there was a moment where it kind of stopped for a moment and then kept on going. I'm exaggerating here just a little bit, but it threw the animators completely off, because as they were trying to animate him and get him to where he needed to be, at a certain point where that hesitation was, he's sliding on the background. So the animators are all upset. The compositors are all upset. Everything's trying to figure out what to do with this. How do we fix the timing issue? And George takes one look at it and goes, "Oh, why don't you just have him slip in the mud?" Because he noticed that at the moment that the hesitation was, that was right where Jar Jar would have been climbing up the bank out of the swamp. And it was perfectly in character for him to do a little whoop, kind of half step and slip in the mud and fix the timing completely. And it's like, that's the stuff you can't go to film school to learn. Just being around that kind of I'll say it, genius. So. That's and also, George was what was really interesting about it, working with him is that he's not one of those my way or the highway kind of directors. He picks the right people, and he knows that they can do the job, and he gives them enough space to do so, and he takes suggestions from them, and then there are other times where it's like, no, okay, we need to do it this way, and here's why, and he's able to explain it. So, but that was the cool thing. But if you want me to pick out different artists and people like that, it's so hard, because it's like everybody, iron sharpens iron, and we all get better at what we're doing by working together as a team.
Yeah.
I always tell people, if you want to get into visual effects and animation in particular, or just anything in the film and television industry, don't be a hot dogger. Don't be a lone wolf. You're not going to last long. You've got to be a team player. You really do, because it is a team.
Yeah.
Putting these things together.
So we've got a flurry of kind of interconnected questions from the chat.
Let's hear them. Okay.
And so
number
one is one of your friends would like you to tell a story of digitally removing cows. And
Yes.
And the question that I think may be kind of related to that is, how much of Naboo was actually shot at Lake Como, and without giving away 30-year-old trade secrets, you're talking about painting things in and painting things out. What sort of technology were you really using to do that in the late 90s? Is it's obviously, I would think, not a brush.
You want to know the truth? Yeah. Photoshop and After Effects, the Adobe suite. That's
John Knowles, baby.
That's right. Absolutely. John and Tom Knowles. Yeah. That, and we also had at ILM, we had an in-house compositing software, our own proprietary software called CompTime, which was a lot like After Effects as far as the interface and everything. But as far as painting out the cows and the landscaping of Naboo, I spent 6 months of my life landscaping the planet of Naboo, because it doesn't really exist. Actually, it's the parts in the battle sections of it are actually in the area of Petaluma in the North Bay in San Francisco Bay Area. Dennis Murin went up there with a 35 millimeter still camera loaded with motion picture film stock, and he shot hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of photos of the rolling green hills out there. So they scanned all those photos, brought it into the computer, and then I would take it and put it in Photoshop. And so you'd take foreground grass from one photo, and midground grass from another photo, and background grass from another photo, and every hill is from a different photograph. Put it all together into Photoshop and make it look perfect and pristine, and then you have to paint out the cows and the telephone poles and the tire tracks and all the stuff that you'd find in this farmland up there in Petaluma, and just make it look absolutely perfect. And then you have to mess it up with all these scorch marks and battle damage and Gungan footprints and that sort of thing. And then also we needed clouds. George Lucas was very insistent on having big, beautiful, puffy white clouds on Naboo at all times. And we thought, okay, fine. We've got a stock library of photos. We got clouds. We're good. We burned through that so fast. It's not even funny. And we start to repurpose the clouds, as much as we can. And it's starting to look like it's the same cloud. So here we are, like 4 hours into the battle, and the same clouds hanging over the battlefield. And I guess there's no wind on Naboo. So I mentioned this to my wife, Veronica Loud, who is a wonderful photographer. And it had rained the night before. And she's driving down the street in San Francisco, total rock star move. She's driving down the street in San Francisco. She sees the perfect puffy white clouds in the sky, those perfect Naboo clouds. She, while driving, grabs her camera, leans out the car window and snaps these amazing photographs. Lucasfilm paid her for them. And that's how we finished the ground battle. It was just, we couldn't have done it without her and those clouds. So that's the story of the clouds there. But yeah, so all the stuff that's in the actual battle part of it, those backgrounds are all pieced together in Photoshop and other software there. It wasn't the stuff that was shot overseas. So and I have to give props to a guy named Ron Brown, who was my Jedi master when I got into the matte painting portion of things there, because he was the guy that basically tutored me in how to do matte paintings. Because it was the funny thing, when I left LucasArts, the last project that I worked on was Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine. And the last thing I was doing was textures. I was doing tiling cycling animation. So it was things that were 16 pixels by 16 pixels. That's as big as it was. And it had to tile on all sides. So it looked like a seamless image. And it had to animate. It had to cycle over. So it was like lava textures, water textures, things like that. It drove me mad trying to do that. Trying to get, and then I go from that to doing these full high res, matte paintings. And it's like, I can breathe. Okay. So it was an amazing thing. And to this day, I still don't know what it was that got me into doing the matte paintings, or why they even thought, or why even Ron thought, to say, hey, how about this guy? I'll take him. Because like I said, I was hired as a compositor into the rotoscoping department and didn't even do any rotoscoping until the end of Phantom Menace. I was doing matte paintings. So
that's great. Thanks for sharing that, Andrew.
Sure.
What wonderful story. So I got a question from one of our. We'll return to the regular schedule of questions in a second, but
we'll return to our regularly scheduled programming in just a moment. Yes.
I just want to jump in with a fascinating member question here. We've got to go back, Marty. We've got to go back. One of the questions was,
go back. Yes.
How does a kid growing up in the Bay Area, filming out in his parents' backyard, and enjoying movies, how did you get your start with LucasArts? How did that come about?
It's funny. It was the one, or actually I think maybe two times in my entire career. I've had lots of different jobs, amazing jobs and everything. Only twice did I ever get a job because I answered an ad. I was actually, at the time, I was working in accounting. I had worked for 4 years in the accounting department at a big international freight forwarding company. They told me I was good at it. I don't remember. I learned it all mechanically. The whole time that I was there, I was plotting and planning how I could leave. For 4 years, I was trying to figure my escape and get into the entertainment industry. I mean, I've done stuff as an actor, but I really wanted to do effects and animation. And so I sent my resume around to every film studio that I could find, every production company, every game company in Northern California, everything I could find. I got a lovely stack of rejection letters back, if I got anything. And the problem is that I was reading those, but if anybody out there who's watching this has those books, like, resumes that knock them dead and cover letters that knock them dead, if you have those, take them and immediately put them in the recycling bin. They're absolutely worthless. They really are completely worthless, because all they do is teach you how to sound like everybody else. And when people are wanting to hire artists and any job, actually, they don't want that. They want to know who you are, because you're the one that they're hiring. And so I had been following those books and doing that all along, and that's why I was getting rejections. And so finally, I saw an ad in the paper. This is back before we had all the online stuff for, this would have been 1993. And, before you had all these online job listings and things like that, you'd go to the newspaper. And I remember in the San Francisco Examiner Chronicle, they had an ad for, it wasn't even called LucasArts at the time yet. It was still called Lucasfilm Games. And they were looking for a customer support representative, a tech rep. And so that was the job that I applied for. So basically, if you bought a game from LucasArts and you couldn't get it to run on your computer, and you were all angry, and you went to the manual and you looked up the manual and you looked at the back of it and you saw that 800 number and you called the number, I was the poor guy that answered the phone to your angry phone call. But I went for I remember I saw this job listing, and I think, oh my gosh, I've got to do this. I've got to get in. This is my foot in the door. And I tried something different than what I had done before. I typed up my resume as best I could and everything. And I wrote the cover letter, but this time I wrote it differently. And I noticed that they had like 5 things that they were looking for a tech rep. And so I listed their 5 things, their criteria, and then I listed my 5 equivalents. And then I said to them in a professional manner, I said in the letter, I said, here's why I want to work for you. It wasn't like, I want to be George. It was like, yeah, here's why I want to work for you. So I changed it up completely. And I didn't do the whole thing of like, well, you got to put your objective in there and you've got to put all the, no, nonsense. just be you. Because, if you have a demo reel that shows people what you can do, if you have a resume, it shows you what you have done. But your cover letter is their first chance to meet you. And you want them to actually meet you. You want them to see who you are, and hopefully have you come in for an interview. So I sent it off, and I got a response. They wanted me to come in for an interview, and I thought, oh great, this is fantastic. So I said, I'm not going to blow this interview. So I got in the car, and I lived in San Francisco at the time, and no, actually I was living even further down in the peninsula. I wasn't married yet, so I had a nice long drive into Marin County. And I thought, okay, I'm going to drive there first. So like the day before, so I don't mess this up. I don't want to be late and everything. And this is before we had GPS and all that. I had a Thomas guide, the book of maps that I had in the car there. And of course, I picked the most ridiculous route. I didn't even pick the fastest route. So something that took me way downtown and around by the marina and everything, and then finally across the Golden Gate Bridge. But I get there, and I find the address, and I look at the building, and I'm going, this is the place? Because they didn't have the buildings marked. All these buildings were LucasArts and Industrial Light and Magic and all that stuff. They weren't marked. They were all given these, like they would leave like the old business names on them, like Kerner Optical Company and things like that. They would leave that on the building so that people wouldn't come, the fans wouldn't try to find where the buildings were. And so it was very nondescript buildings. And I find this building, I'm thinking, this is it? I don't know, I was expecting welcome to Lucasland, no, it wasn't like that. But I thought, okay, I found it. I know where to go. This is great. I'm all set. I go to sleep that night. I wake up in the morning, and the emergency broadcast system is going off. And it has been pouring down rain. I mean, buckets of rain. And I'm seeing footage as I'm getting ready. I'm looking on the television, and I see like helicopter footage of cars stalled in the water on the freeway, on the roads that I have to travel to get to my job interview. And I'm like, no, it was just horrible. But I think I gotta go. I gotta try it. I gotta risk it. So I'm in this pathetic little 1974 Dodson 1200. I used to call it the car of death, because the first time I tried to drive it, it tried to kill me. It's just a really pathetic little car. But and I'm driving, and I can't see a thing. I've got the wipers going like this, and I can't see anything except for the taillights in the car in front of me. And I'm following that, and I'm thinking, oh, I hope they're staying on the road. And finally, I get through that spot where all the cars have been stalled out, and I see them along the side of the road. But the water's starting to subside, and the rain's starting to stop. And by the time I got to my job interview, the rain had stopped. I went into the interview. I was completely overdressed. And I didn't look like I worked at a game, or I belonged in a game company at all. I'm wearing like some kind of strange sport coat and a bolo tie. I don't know what possessed me to wear that, and slacks and dress shoes. And it's like at a game company. But I go in for the interview, and everything's going great. The woman who's interviewing me, she's laughing at all my jokes, and everything's wonderful, and everything's fantastic, and I'm killing it. And then I find out she's a screener. Then I got to go next door into the next room to have the interview with the actual manager of the department, a woman named Chris Brown, who is now works in voice talent and everything like that, and voice director. And so I go in there, and she is a stone cold slab. Just now, none of my jokes are landing. I'm fidgeting, I'm sweating, I'm just a mess. But I make it through the interview, and I get out of there, and I just thank God I had a chance to do it. And I think, oh, well, at least I tried. The next morning, I get a phone call from the stone cold slab, who is now this giggly, bubbly person. I don't recognize the voice at all. And she's saying, when can you start? So February 1st, 1993 was when I started at LucasArts. And I did a year in customer support and as a tech rep there, and then submitted my portfolio to the art director, Colette Michaud. And Colette took a look at my portfolio, and she said, basically, well, this is junior level stuff. And I was like, stick the knife in and twist it. But she looked at my background, and when I was in high school and right out of high school, I'd done a lot of work with video. I worked at a TV station, and a cable access TV station. Actually, Dana Carvey from Saturday Night Live worked at the same station with me. So This is what the station was like. If you remember the Wayne's World sketches with extreme close up, and that was what our studio was like. It was just like that. And so Colette looks at my resume. She looks at my portfolio. She's not that impressed. She looks at my resume and she sees all this video background. And it turns out that she was working on a game that was going to involve a lot of full motion video. And there were only two guys in the whole company that knew anything about video. One guy was on sabbatical, and the other guy, Mike Levine, was assigned to another project. So I was brought into the bottom of the art department, right at the bottom of the ladder, a position called art technician. So this was a position where I wasn't even creating art. I was taking the art that the artist did, which was in millions of colors, and I was dropping the palette down to 256 colors because that's what Windows could handle at that time. So actually, I couldn't even do 256 colors. I couldn't touch the 32 Windows interface colors, or everything goes wonky on the screen. So I had to drop the palette and make it look good. The first game that I worked on was a game called Mortimer and the Riddles of the Medallion. And if you say you remember this game, you are lying. It didn't sell very well. It's a great game, wonderful game about a flying snail. It was just a wonderful, fun game. But when I started on the game, I was art technician. By the time the game shipped, I was lead effects animator. And then soon after that became visual effects supervisor and senior artist. And then from there to ILM, and rest is history.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Andrew, for sharing that. Do you know, I resonate with the Stone Cold Slab. I remember going to my second interview, I think, in my career, and after 3 minutes was told to get out because
oh my gosh.
I was going for a position in a department store, and jokingly I said I could see myself working in the ladies' apparel section. Get out.
Oh, God.
I thought it was funny, but it didn't go down very well.
Join the cast of Are You Being Served, right?
Almost, yes. Almost.
Yes. Yeah.
So anyway,
and by the way, my apologies to the Stone Cold Slab, Chris Brown. You're not a Stone Cold Slab. You were just, you had your poker face on at that time. You were rad. I love you, Chris.
Game face. So, switching gears.
Yes.
I want to talk about this guy. This guy.
Yes.
That is at this moment crushing my head.
Side.
Crushing
that is
my
actually
head.
Me right there behind you.
So I know. So this is why we have this background. So I wanted to ask you. Okay. Mm-hmm. So moving to the dark side.
Yes.
I know that you've got some amazing experience working for ILM and LucasArts, but I really want to talk about your appearances as Darth Vader, mm-hmm. specifically within the special edition re-release of the original Star Wars trilogy. I mean, how did that happen?
It all started because I like to say that I was at the right place at the right time at the right height. I was working at Lucas.
And I've got to show you. I've got to share a picture, by the way.
Okay, go ahead.
Keep talking.
Sure. So I was working at LucasArts. I was still in customer support. I hadn't quite gone over to the art department yet. And I get a call from the head of public relations, who was a woman who was upstairs from me. And she starts the conversation not with hello, but she says, "Hey, Andrew, how tall are you?" I said, "I'm 6'5". Why do you ask? Well, she was like 5'1". I think she wanted me to come upstairs and get something down off a shelf for her or something like that. So, there we go. Look at that handsome gentleman who's sweating profusely there. She says to me, "How tall are you?" And I tell her how tall I am. And then she says to me, "Do you have any acting experience?" I said, "Yeah." At that point, I'd had like maybe 20, 21, 22 years of theater and film and television. And I let her know that. And I'm trying to figure out where this is going, And then she says, because she's got that when you're talking to somebody on the phone and you can't see them, but you can hear a smile in their voice. That was what I'm thinking. There's more to this. There's more. I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, or in this case, the other boot to drop. And so then she says to me, she hits me with this. She says, "Can you breathe for me?" So, you put the pieces together and you think, okay, how tall are you? Do you have any acting experience? It's a Lucas company. Can you breathe for me? And I leaned into my phone and I went, like that. And I go, so what's going on here? And it turns out they were looking for somebody to play Vader for a charity event, for a meet and greet. for Big Brothers Big Sisters of America, and so the kids could have their photo taken with Darth Vader and a couple of stormtroopers. And this is before the wonderful 501st Legion was around and doing all this wonderful charity stuff. So somebody had, I mean, they knew I had a background in acting. I'd been tipped up that they'd been pointed to by somebody there, and so they thought, okay, well, you know, he'd be a good candidate. And so they said, okay, well, you need to meet with the archivist, Don Bees. And so I call up Don, and he said, well, I'm over at ILM right now, right this week. So why don't you come meet me over at ILM? I said, okay, great. I'm thinking, cool, I get to see ILM. Because at this point, I'd never been to ILM. It was across the parking lot from me, but I'd never been there. So I get to go over to the model shop. It's like, oh, this is like a dream come true. This is great. So I'm walking up to the building, and I don't know what I expected. I expected sort of like, you know, hey, you can't come in here, it's restricted. You know, I was expecting some kind of high security, and it wasn't quite like that. I walk up and I'm like, you know, excuse me, I'm looking for Don. Who? Don. So I'm looking around trying to find Don. I'm seeing all this wonderful stuff. I'm seeing like the dragon's head from Dragonheart, and I'm seeing the big painting of Vigo from Ghostbusters 2, and I'm seeing all these wonderful models and things like that and creatures. And I'm walking around, but as I was walking towards the building originally, I'm looking. I see that they had like one big like garage door type, roll up garage door type thing on the warehouse, you know, open, and then I see also a doorway that was open, and down that doorway, down the hallway, I see the Vader costume in a big plexiglass case. And I'm looking at that thing. It's like, wow, that thing's big. Okay. Well, I finally tracked down Don, and he says, well, he goes, hey, how you doing? Nice to meet you. You're not claustrophobic, are you? No, I don't think so. No. I said, okay, good. Okay. So we're talking and we're chatting, and then we run into Nelson Hall, another modeler from the model department there, and he introduces me to Nelson, and Nelson said, hey, nice to meet you, great to meet you. Hey, you're not claustrophobic, are you? No, I don't think so. So then we're walking along, and you're showing me the nickel tour of the place, and we run into Grand Imahara, who everybody knows now from Mythbusters and everything, and dear friend who passed away about a year ago, but introducing me to Grant. And Grant's, hey, nice to meet you and everything. And we're chatting for a bit. And then he goes, hey, you're not claustrophobic, are you? At this point, I'm going, I don't know, maybe I am. So Don gives me the nickel tour, and we're going around the model shop, we're looking at everything. And we end up in the room where the Vader's costume is. And I'm looking at this thing, and I'm going, this thing is huge. I'm never going to fit into that. Well, at least I got to see ILM. Then finally, Don says, oh, yeah, this is one we made for Planet Hollywood. It's a bit beefier than the real deal. And I'm thinking, oh, because everybody's acting like it's a done deal. I'm going to fit this costume. So then I think it was like the next week I had to go up to the ranch to the archives building. The archives building is amazing because it's on the outside, it looks like a barn, just a big light blue, robin's egg blue barn. On the inside, it's this wonderfully climate controlled building that's got every prop, every costume, every miniature, everything you can think of from all the Lucas productions and everything. You know, you got all the Star Wars stuff, all the Indiana Jones stuff. The Michael Jackson's Captain EO costume was there. The Howard the Duck costume, they used to keep it inside the Ark of the Covenant. Don't open it. So I tried on the costume, and it fit. And we did that one event, and with the kids, and the day before the Marin County Fair opened, and it was just amazing. I just thank God I had a chance to do it. And I thought it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And then they called me back for something else. And they called me back for something else. And eventually, I ended up playing Vader 70 times over 12 years. My wife made me keep count. So, yep. And there I am with David Tattersall, the director of photography from the prequels. That was on the set of a M&M's commercial that we shot. So, which is a great commercial. You can find it on YouTube. It's called Red's Decision. It's a very funny commercial.
So questions from the chat about Vader is,
yes.
What is your favorite part about playing Darth Vader, or your favorite moment, presumably as Darth Vader?
Oh, gosh, that's Sophie's choice. Which one of my children is my favorite? I can't pick one. It's well, okay. There's a few. There's wonderful. I mean, shooting the special edition was amazing because at this point, I finally get to be part of my favorite film franchise. Up until that point, I'd been doing commercials and print and live appearances and things like that. But I finally get to be in the movies now. And the problem was that we were scheduled to shoot. This was we were shooting in summer of 96, and then it was going to be released in 97. And so we were supposed to shoot down at ILM on the blue screen stages there. And I remember that the day we were scheduled to shoot was the day that my daughter, our first child, was due to be born. And so Don keeps calling me up and everything. So, baby born yet? And it's like, no, not yet. He's doing his best to hold this open for me and everything. So thankfully, my daughter was born 2 weeks early. So I was able to do the shoot. And that was an incredible experience to be able to do that. And a little difficult. One of the shots that's inserted into the film there is a shot where Vader is walking from Cloud City to his shuttle because it was never quite clear, and George wanted to add this scene. And so we're up on a platform, I think we're about maybe 6 feet off the ground or so on a blue screen stage at ILM, and it's me and some Imperial officers and stormtroopers, and it was a very long platform and fairly narrow. And when you're in the costume, you can't really see very well. You can basically see what's directly in front of you through the lenses of the mask, or you can see your feet. I can use the little illustration here. You can see your feet through like the bottom of the breath screen, like right there. That's about it. Everything else is a blind spot. So we had to rehearse it, over and over again with buckets off, as the 501st like to say, with the heads off. And then and then kind of build up the muscle memory, so how many steps can you take before you get to the end of this long platform, and you don't want to go too far left, too far right, and you can't keep your head down trying to see where you're going. Vader has to have this wonderful stride, and so we shot it several times, and then I remember the last take, they go, cut, don't move, and I was like about this far from the end of the platform there. I was taking my nice long big steps. So one more step and I probably would have hit the deck. So I don't know if they were worried about me or the very expensive original costumes. I'd like to think it was me. I would hope it was me. But that was incredible. But you do so many amazing projects. Rebel Assault 2 was an incredible project to shoot as well. It was a half hour of full motion video. It was the first live action Star Wars footage that had been shot since the 2 Ewok TV movies. So it was great to do that. I think, though, that probably the most amazing, most memorable thing are the times that you're interacting with people and you're, especially the children. And there was a time where Lucasfilm had sent me to a big event in Toronto to do a live appearance. Again, this is before the 501st were, doing all the wonderful work that they do. And I was supposed to be doing an appearance at Walmart, sort of a meet and greet, and Walmart had just become a big vendor for Lucasfilm and the toys and everything in Canada. So they sent me to Toronto, and I'm standing in line, or I'm standing there, and there's a whole line of people waiting to have their photo taken with Vader. And so I'm standing there looking all Vaderly and all that, and there was a young man. He was probably about 10, 12, somewhere on there. And his little sister, who couldn't have been any more than 5. She was just a little thing, sweet little thing. And they're standing in line, they're moving up and they're moving up. And when you would do a live appearance, you're basically like a Disneyland character. You don't speak, you just sort of pantomime everything. It's a little more exaggerated. If we were doing something on camera, obviously you would say the dialogue that needs to be said so that the other actors have the timing. And you play it straight. You're in the Star Wars universe, you play it straight. If you're in our universe, then you can kind of goof around with it. I did some very humorous commercials. I did one for Walmart one time where Vader and Chewie are living with this couple because they just got the DVD set, and it was they said it was just like having the characters living with you, and then so we're actually living with them. That's their gag, and so it becomes funny. But when you were doing the live appearances, you do sort of an exaggerated version of the character, but you're silent. The breathing that was playing. Grant Imahara had rigged up the chess box that would play the breathing sound. So I'm standing there, and they're moving through the line, And finally, the boy and his little sister are up at the front of the line. And I leaned over to them, and I can't say anything, but I just was like that, come here. The little boy hadn't been paying attention. And when he saw that, when he saw Vader menacingly going like this, he lost it, just screaming and yelling and crying. And I thought he was going to wet himself. He was a mess. And the little, the little girl, the little sister goes, walks over to me, takes my hand, looks up at me and goes, I am so sorry about my brother. And it took everything I had not to laugh out loud in the costume. But at that same event, there was a young man there. And again, he was probably about maybe, 12, 13, something like that. He was in a wheelchair. He had cerebral palsy. He was blind. But he loved Star Wars because he listened to Star Wars. He listened to the movies. He listened to the radio shows that were done. He listened to the audiobooks and things like that. And he loved the music, and he just loved Star Wars. And they brought him over to me. This was private, different, away from the whole meet and greet. And they said to him, there's somebody here we want you to meet. And he had a little Darth Vader action. I get choked up with this. He had a little Darth Vader action figure in his hand. And they took his other hand, they put it up on the mask on my face there. And as he felt what it was, and he felt the other thing in his hand, he was like, and he was so excited. And just, it was Niagara Falls inside here. I was just crying, just tears running down. I couldn't see a darn thing at that point, and it didn't matter, because it was like, that's what you do it for. Everything else that I do means nothing compared to something like that, a moment like that, when you can brighten somebody's life that way. My gosh, that's the greatest blessing you can think of. So, and that's why, to this day, when I do convention appearances and things like that, I raise money for the Starlight Children's Foundation that helps children like that helps children and families that have children that are sick and injured, and give them, a life, a childhood, as they're going through whatever, therapy or treatment or surgery or whatever that they're facing. And so, that's the cool part of getting to do this. That's my coolest moment. Those kind of things. There's other great stories, like, I almost caught on fire and things like that. So,
that was actually mentioned in the chat, was talking about that. But last one for the chat for a minute, and we'll get back to the regularly scheduled questions, is I don't even know that this requires an answer because it's obvious, but Tim Donaldson would like to know who Darth Vader's favorite Jawa is.
Well, it's got to be Tim.
That's what I thought.
How you doing, buddy? Good to have you out there. Yeah, no, Tim is great. Tim's wonderful. If you ever get a chance to meet Tim, you got to meet Tim. He's one of the nicest, coolest guys, and his wife. They're both wonderful. If you see them somewhere, in fact, I think we're all going to be at a show in the Santa Cruz area coming up next year.
Capitola.
Capitola, yes.
Capitola, I'll be there. I'll be there.
With our buddy Alan Fernandez, one of the original Tusken Raiders, OG.
Can't wait. I'll be there. Can't wait. So I have a funny story to tell you about. You were talking about what it's like to wear the suit. I was at, I think it was Anaheim 2015, and the 501st had stormtroopers and various Imperial officers, in costumes walking down the stairs. And as you say, it's very difficult in the suit. Yes. And some wag shouted out at the time, "I've seen more graceful Daleks tackle stairs better than you guys."
Oh my gosh. And so they shot him with the blaster. Of course, they missed, but,
you could hear a pin drop. Anyway, so Andrew, I've got a few more questions before we wrap up a little later. But a fascinating question. I know you're on the convention circuit. You just mentioned that. Did you ever get the opportunity to meet Dave Prowse in person? Either personally or professionally?
Yeah, I did. It was 1978. I was like 15 and a half. He came to Berkeley, California, and did a signing at a collectible shop called the Federation Trading Post there. And I stood in line forever to meet him. The line was just huge, just blocks long. And when Dave when he started getting, his hand was cramping up from all this autographs he was signing, he would walk the line and say hi to everybody. And he had little kids sit down in his hand. Then he'd lift them up over his head because he was, champion weightlifter and bodybuilder. And it's like, and I just thought, wow, that's the way to treat the fans, And so I was just about the last person in line to meet him. I had him sign this, my hardcover copy of Star Wars. There it is, and this shows you back in the day I was called Andy. I was still when I was in high school I was Andy, and got to college and I thought, oh, I got to be professional, so I was Andrew then. But yeah, so but that was my one and only time ever meeting Prowse.
And to go on and play so many, to have so many appearances as Darth Vader, then it must have thrilling to think about that you'd actually met the guy that played you.
Oh yeah, the first time that Don B's put me in the Vader costume, he hands it to me and I'm looking at it and it says D. Prowse on the inside, and I'm like, oh, cool. So, but yeah, so but I only ever got to meet Prowse once. He tended not to do convention appearances with anybody else connected with the character, which is kind of sad, but the person who I really knew well and who I really loved was Peter Mayhew. Knew Peter for like 25 years. We traveled together, did different shows together, did commercials together and everything. Peter was wonderful, and love Angie and Katie and everybody. So yeah.
And Ryan is his manager or handler was just fantastic too. And I think I met Peter for the last time in Chicago 2019, shortly after he passed away. But I remember meeting him in the UK. Oh gosh, probably back in early 90s, something like that. He's just such a wonderful person. He had time for everybody. But anyway, next question I've got, and this is something I find absolutely fascinating and unique. So now, I hope I'm correct. I understand you're the only person that's actually officially voiced both Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker.
That's what
is that true?
Yeah, I'm the first person to officially portray both Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker.
Tell us a little about.
I did Luke's voice for some of the LucasArts games. And that was something that I just kind of, I always tell people, I don't believe in luck. I think luck is an acquired skill. You can learn to be lucky. It's opportunity meeting preparedness, and you just have to be ready. They say that good timing is being ready for being at the right place at the right time. I think that really what real good timing is, what luck is being ready for any place to be the right place at any time. I'll say that again, being ready for any place to be the right place at any time. And so I was at my desk doing, working on stuff at LucasArts in the art department there. And somebody sent out a message, one of the programmers sent out a message for the intercompany, messaging there, and said, hey, we need somebody to do a scratch track of Luke. A scratch track is like temporary track, just so they have something that they can work with. I did not even respond to the message. I just got up, ran over to their office and said, I'll do it. And so I did it, and I recorded it right there in their office. And as they were working with it, they go, actually, this is pretty good. I think we'll keep this. And so then when they needed Luke again, they went right to me. And so that was wonderful to be able to do that. So and here's the really amazing thing. And this is, obviously I don't have proof of this, but this is a true story. At the end of summer in 1977, my friends and I, we would go and see Star Wars over and over and over again. And at the end of summer, when the crowds had sort of died down a little bit, we would get there early so we could be first in line. It's like if the movie started at 10 a.m., we'd get, our movie started at 1 p.m., we'd get there at 10 a.m. just so we could be first in lines because, we're first, because we had no jobs, we had no girlfriends, we had no life, we had nothing. And so I remember, me and my two friends were standing around waiting for the rest of the crowd to show up later, at like noon or something. And we're standing around there. And I said to them, I made this wild declaration. I said, one of these days, I'm going to play Darth Vader. They're like, what? I said, look, I'm taller than either of you. And I said, they'll do something and they won't, something else. They won't use the original actors or something. And then another day, we were doing that. I said, one of these days, I'm going to play Luke Skywalker. They're like, shut up. And it's like, yeah, I will. It's like, and I ended up doing both. So, you never know where life is going to take you. You can't limit yourself. You got to stop saying things like, I can't, and learn to say, how can I? So, which then makes it a question, which then makes it an objective, which then makes it a goal. So you've got to be able to frame your mind differently. Otherwise, I could never have done all these things that are on my resume. I could never have met all these wonderful people, both famous and unknown. I wouldn't be here on this podcast right now with you guys if I hadn't, if I'd said I can't. But so you have to be able to be open for these opportunities to happen. So.
Very wise words. Very wise words. I completely resonate with that. So, talking a little bit more about voiceover work. I understand you've done, obviously visual effects, but then you've done some acting work and some voiceover work. So, I mean, how does that compare? I mean, if you would enjoy one or the other, which do you kind of lean more towards, voiceover acting or visual effects, or do you just like everything?
I like it all. It's like I'm just one of those people who just can't choose. I just like to do so many different things. I like to act. I like to do voiceover. I like to teach. I like to animate. I like to do visual effects. I like to edit. I do all kinds of different things. I like to write, all sorts of stuff. And so I could never choose. The wonderful thing, though, about the film industry and the television industry, it's a little bit different now, but classically, the production and post-production are the opposite cycles of each other. So if I can do, production work as an actor in front of the camera, and then I can do post-production work as a visual effects artist or animator and a voiceover artist, I have a greater chance of working more often throughout the year, hopefully. So that's one reason why I do it. But I will say this: I love working on camera as an actor. I love working on stage. I've done stand-up comedy, did stand-up comedy for years. I actually started out at the same time as Rob Schneider. He went to my rival high school, and we actually performed a couple of times together and played some of the same clubs in San Francisco and stuff. But my favorite type of acting is voice acting. I absolutely love voice acting because you can be anything. Doesn't matter what you look like. Doesn't matter how you look while you're doing it, because I have looked a fool in that recording booth. I really have. And just to get whatever sound that you need. If you need this voice that sounds like this, and maybe you can torch your body, and you never know what you're going to do. And you can play anything. I was a surfer dude octopus singing country western music for the PBS Kids TV series Between the Lions, which I was also an animator for. And so you get stuff thrown at you all the time. Also, what I love about voice acting is that on average, voice actors are really supportive of each other. They all end up being friends, and if you can't do a gig, sometimes you recommend somebody else, and so they're all wonderful people. People like Billy West and Phil Lamar and Maurice LaMarche and everybody. They're all really cool people, and so that's something I do love about it. Yeah. And it's a great thing to be able to do, Luke's voice, and then to do other voices for LucasArts and other characters for other companies and things like that. And I'm working on a project right now that's all voice. It's called Heroes of Extinction. And it's a 7-part audio drama, superhero audio drama. And the tagline is, when our greatest heroes have all been wiped out, who will step up to take their place? And it's a story of a guy named Gabriel Cohen, who is a superhero named True Strike. He has been a superhero all his life since he was a teenager. It's the only job he's ever known. And he gets his powers from an alien collective that gives him his super strength, his super speed, and his ability to teleport. And they also act like an intergalactic Siri in his head. He can get information from them in different dangerous situations that helps him out. But now Gabriel's turning 50, and his body is aging, and it's not connecting with the alien technology like it used to. So his powers aren't as reliable as they once were. Well, somebody or a group of people he doesn't know who yet, are systematically taking out all the superheroes and the supervillains. And there has been a rash of killer mutants that have been unleashed upon the city of Metro Heights, which is the city that he defends. And they're killing people. And the love of his life, a scientist who may have been involved in these mutants, has been killed by one of them. So he has to mourn her death. He has to find out who's behind all of this. He has to stop these killer mutants, and he has to train his replacement, because the collective has told him he needs to find his successor, someone who is young and pure of heart. So I'm working as the co-producer of the project with Jerry Cornell, who is the creator of the show. I am co-producer, I'm the director, and I am the narrator, which means I end up with more lines than anybody else, because I have to tell everybody what they can't see. We have a wonderful cast of people in there, which even includes a couple of Star Wars alumni. We've got Mark Dodson's doing the voice for us. Mark Dodson, of course, the voice of Salacious Crumb and the voice of the Gremlins from the Gremlins movies. He's doing the voice for us. We've got Isaac Singleton Jr., who was on The Mandalorian, and he was in Pirates of the Caribbean, Curse of the Black Pearl, and he was in Galaxy Quest and a bunch of other things too. Mary Gibbs, who's the voice of Boo from Monsters Incorporated. She plays the young woman that Gabriel finds to train as his successor. We've just got an incredible cast. And so if people go to heroesofextinction.com, which is sort of in its infancy, the website, but that's where you can find out about the project later on. But I just love voice acting, and I love, the old radio dramas. This is like the modern spin of the old radio dramas.
Yeah, I'm sure our members will be fascinated and interested to hear of any of your future projects.
Sorry, that was a shameless plug. I didn't mean.
Oh no, not at all. We'd be fascinated to hear more about your work. Having understood a little bit more about you this evening, that would be great to hear more about that. Yeah. So before we wrap up and we have some more questions from the group members, I just want to make, rather than a question, a comment. One thing I'm personally very connected with you on is, I know that you returned to academia as visual effects director for the School of Animation and Visual Effects at the Academy of Art in San Francisco. And then you're obviously representing the Visual Effects Society. And I would assume that's you giving back, you're something from your experiences at ILM and LucasArts. And, I work in higher education, and I think that's something that's just, you should be congratulated on. And there's not many people that do that. So thank you for doing that. And, for lending your experience to students that, as you've just mentioned, that are now working on, future and current projects, as we take visual effects into, a new era. So thank you for doing that. We appreciate that. Okay, David, is there any more questions? I have one final question for Andrew in a second, which I'm saving till the last.
Are you now, or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party? No.
Saving the best till last. Do we have any more questions?
What's your favorite color, Andrew? No.
No.
So yes,
it's blue, by the way.
We've been asked to ask you about something called Aquacy on YouTube.
Aquacy.
And Aquacy.
Yes, Aquacy.
And something about talking fish.
Yes, I as you can see behind me, we've got a couple of fish tanks there behind me. That is my absolutely obsessive hobby. I don't use that word lightly. It's obsessive. I have been someone who has kept fish tanks since I was 10 years old. And I have always maintained at least one tank since I was 10 years old. So I actually have a YouTube channel about it. Can I put that up there? Will it show it? There you go. Focus.
Yes, there it is.
Anyway, AQUATASY, Aquacy, on YouTube. It is a YouTube channel. I did not intend to have a YouTube channel. I was online on an online forum trying to get some information about a particular fish species, and everybody on the forum was like, "Hey, let's all post videos of our tanks." And I thought, all right, I'll join in. But me being me, I can't get out the cell phone and shoot something and upload it. No, I got to add titles to it and edit it and music and graphics, and I went completely overboard. And I was looking for somewhere to host the video, so I could put a link on the forum. And I think, well, YouTube seemed easy, but you have to create a channel for yourself. So I thought, well, I better give the channel a name. Well, if I give it a name, I better give it a name that I can get a URL for, just in case. And it just started to snowball. So I did the first video, I posted it on YouTube, and I put the link on the forum, and everybody's like, "Dude, that's great. You should do another one." So I did another one. I now have almost 15,000 subscribers for Fish Tank Channel, but it's Darth Vader's Fish Tank Channel. The channel's got about 1.5 million views, and it's fun. And so, some of the videos are teaching videos. Some of them are, comedy videos. I've got sassy back talking fish. You laugh. You don't have to live with them. I do. Actually, I'm surprised they're being quiet right now. I guess they're just angry at me. They're not speaking with me. But it's fun. So that is my obsessive hobby, because it's a crazy business. At any given moment, when you're working in visual effects or animation or anything in the film industry, it feels like there is a multi-million-dollar production sitting on your shoulders waiting for you to get your part of it done. That's how it feels. The reality of it is, there really is a multi-million-dollar production sitting on your shoulders waiting for you to get your part of it done, and that's a lot of pressure. So I chill out by having fish tanks. And so you can check it out, Aquaticy there. So Aquaticy on YouTube, and it's fun. And some of the videos are I get, that's also a very rewarding thing too, because I'm giving back to a hobby that I've always enjoyed. And I find out all sorts of information because, if you're smart, if you want to teach anything, you've got to be a lifelong student. You got to keep learning about it. And so I'm always learning about effects and animation and acting and everything, but I'm also learning about my fish tanks. I'm learning about fish and sharing that with people. And there's a couple of videos I've done on particular things, and people say, oh my gosh, I couldn't find any other videos on this. I'm so glad you did that you posted this, because I was worried about this that was going on with my fish. And it's like, great, so that's again kind of like giving back.
Well, I'll let you into a secret.
Right.
We won't turn this into a fish conversation, but I have a 17,000 gallon exterior koi pond, and I have female koi that flirt with me.
Oh, I bet they do.
I am married and I have children, by the
way. I love koi. Koi are wonderful.
They're wonderful.
Yes.
David,
but they're sassy too. Yeah. That's great.
All right. So these are a little controversial.
How do you follow that up? Yeah.
A little controversial questions right here.
Yeah.
This is kind of a combination of two. So bear with me. Should Star Wars have stopped after the OT? Should it have, continued and been something else?
Oh, this is
and what did you think of the latest installment, Rise of Skywalker?
I'm glad I'm not answering this question. So I'm gonna
there's a landmine for you. Okay. I'll give you my honest answer. I love the original trilogy, obviously. Love the original trilogy, especially Empire Strikes Back, which is my favorite Star Wars movie. When I was working on the prequels, of course, we were all excited about it. The thing that a lot of people don't realize, when you're working in visual effects, you work for 6 months to a year or more on a project, and most of the time you don't know if the movie you're working on is any good until it comes out in theaters or you see a screening of it finally. Because when you're working on it, you're working on things that are out of sequence, without sound. You see your portion of the movie and that's it. And so we didn't know what to expect, and the expectations are so high for Phantom Menace. It's been the first Star Wars film in 16 years, and it's hard to meet those expectations. And I can remember the company screening for Phantom Menace. We had to have several of them because there was so many people in the Lucas companies. And I remember it sitting in the screening that I was at, and the credits roll, the end of the film, it was silent. And I think it was this kind of like, is that it? Is that it? That's it? Because your expectations are so high, and I had that sort of same feeling. I watched it again about a year later, and I thought, okay, this is a really good intro to the whole saga. I like this. I like episode 1. So when I went into episode 2, and I was working on a lot more shots on episode 2. On episode 1, I was mostly on the ground battle, and then I did part of the saber battle with Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan against Darth Maul. And then I did some of the celebration at the end, just before the credits. And then I also did a little bit on the space battle, but I was mostly on the ground battle. So I didn't have a clear idea of what the storyline was going to be. On Attack of the Clones, I was all over the place, doing shots all over in the film there. So I had a little more idea sort of visually what was going on. But again, I'm not seeing it with sound, so I don't know exactly what's going on there. And so I had lowered expectations. So I actually had a much higher opinion of Attack of the Clones when I saw it at the screening. So it's actually my favorite of the prequels. And then I didn't work on Revenge of the Sith. I saw it at a screening at Skywalker Ranch, sitting right behind George. And so that was kind of interesting. And I was sitting there with Don and some others. And so it was, I like that one. To me, is an uneven film. I think that the parts of it that are good are like really good. And there are parts of it that I think are kind of, I would say gratuitous, meaning that it doesn't there's stuff in there that just really doesn't need to be there, in my opinion. I actually thought that the whole battle on the Wookiee planet didn't need to be there. Doesn't really move the story much, to me. But all the other stuff was great. The one thing I would have changed about Revenge of the Sith is I would have never have shown Vader or Anakin becoming Vader. I would have left it ambiguous. I would have left him, supposedly dead at the end of the film, so that when people watch the films in numerical order and they get to Empire Strikes Back and that wonderful moment, no, Luke, I am your father, that would still resonate, because but now at this point, people watch it and go, yeah, I know, we know, so I would left that a mystery. As far as the sequel films, let's see. I enjoyed Force Awakens. I thought it was an okay beginning of things. Kind of a little bit of a retread of New Hope, but I enjoyed it. I loved Rogue One. I absolutely loved Rogue One. Amazing film. I think that Rogue One is not only a good Star Wars movie, it's also a good war movie, and it's just a good movie. And yeah, I really liked it. It was probably my second favorite Star Wars film, right after Empire Strikes Back. I think that Rogue One makes New Hope a better movie. If you watch them, back to back, it just fills out so much that the background. It's good. Last Jedi, I did not like Last Jedi. Did not enjoy it at all. I could go on. I could write a thesis on how much I didn't like it and how it was just sort of how not to make a movie. I just really didn't care for it, and because of that, I didn't even see Solo or Rise of Skywalker. I was just so disappointed in Last Jedi, and not everybody's going to have that feeling. There's some people, that's their favorite film, and that's great. That's one thing that's wonderful about Star Wars. There's enough of Star Wars that everybody can find something that's their favorite. And nowadays, oh my gosh, I love The Mandalorian. Mandalorian is fantastic. It is some of the best Star Wars since the original trilogy, I think. I just really, and it reminds me of the storylines that we tried to tell at LucasArts with some of our games, like Dark Forces and Jedi Knight and stuff like that. I think I just love The Mandalorian. I can't get enough of it, and I'm looking forward to Book of Boba Fett. I really am.
That's exactly the conversations that we have. It's like that. Yeah. This should not be divisive or split fandom. It's hey, we talk about it all the time. One of our moderators loves, or a couple of our moderators love Last Jedi. And it's hey, that's okay. There are movies that we love.
There's some things in Last Jedi that are wonderful. All the stuff that on Crate, visually fantastic. Mark Hamill's performance is amazing. Even if I don't like what they did with his character, Mark is such an incredible actor. I don't think he gets nearly enough credit for how good an actor he is.
Precisely.
And just a really nice guy. Really nice guy.
I've got to tell you this story. I remember a Lucasfilm employee who will remain nameless said to me once that, just like you, we sat at the screening and we watched Phantom Menace, and most of the people that he watched it with said, well, my sequence was okay.
And I think again, a lot of it was the expectation. Because when I saw it again a year later after the initial screening, I thought, well, what was I disappointed in? I liked it, and I'm not a Jar Jar hater. I'm not a big Jar Jar fan, but I see the purpose of the character, and so I don't have a problem with that and everything. I like the to me that those films still ring true as Star Wars, and I like them a lot. And for everybody who I hope you're not disappointed that I don't like Last Jedi and everything. Again, that's just me. That's just me. And it's like, and I celebrate everybody else who loves it and everything. So that's awesome.
We're all individuals.
There's enough Star Wars for everybody.
Yep, we're all individuals, and that's what makes us all interesting. So,
can I say one last thing before we end?
Sure. Go ahead.
The wonderful thing about Star Wars is it creates for all of us this sort of sense of family, and in a sense that we're all connected by our love of Star Wars as fans. We're all connected to it, and also on the other side of things, of when you've worked on it, you're almost like you're in the family all of a sudden, and I don't mean that in like a mafia way. I mean, you really are part of something now. Just recently met Emily Swallow, who was the armorer on The Mandalorian, and did a
She's
convention with
wonderful.
her, and it's like wonderful. And we did a panel together. She and I and Alan Fernandez and Neil Kaplan, who's done all kinds of wonderful voices for Star Wars games and things like that. And except for Alan and I, none of us had met before. And instantly there's this camaraderie because you have this background, this thing that connects you all together. And I think that's the same thing that connects us with the fans, and what connects the fans with other fans. That's is something that that George just had his finger on the pulse of what was missing in pop culture, in almost the same way that Walt Disney did for years and years. And I'm always going to be forever grateful for that.
Yeah.
And forever grateful that, because of all that, my life changed for the better, and I have gotten to do all these wonderful things like being here with you guys right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So before we go to the final question I have for you, David, last call for any questions from the chat.
Well,
Come on, make it a good one.
I think you really just kind of answered one of the ones that we had here. Is our friend Scooby was talking about, we're all here because we share a passion for the franchise, and you've begun a little bit to speak about the comradeship of those you've worked with and project that you've worked with, the pride and the fellowship of creating something together. There seems to be a culture behind the scenes that seems to feel like family. Could you talk about that just a little bit more?
Yeah, it's true. Like, it reminds me of back in my days in theater. In theater, when you're in a theater company, you are sort of forced together. A bunch of strangers are forced together very quickly, and you have to rely on each other very quickly because you're doing a live play together, and you have a short amount of rehearsal time, and you're on stage, and if somebody messes up, that throws everybody else off. So you have to develop this camaraderie. It's almost like being in the military. If you're in battle or something like that, you've got to be able to trust the rest of the people in your platoon. And being involved in something like Star Wars is kind of like that. You are, whether you're an actor on camera, or you're an actor behind the microphone, or you're doing visual effects, or you're editing, or whatever, you're part of this team, and we have to rely on each other because you're together for a short amount of time to overcome this huge battle that you've got to do, which is to bring this thing to life, to bring this thing to fruition. And you do develop a camaraderie. And because of that, you also end up with a lot of war stories, and you can commiserate later. You see all these wonderful things of people who are, have involved with various things. They'll sit and they'll reminisce. Well, you do that and everything. I mean, before I even got on this podcast, I was going down memory lane with Don B's, through some instant messaging and stuff like that. That's the kind of thing that this lasts forever, that you have. And then when you meet new people who that join the fold, you get to share those stories with them, and they share their stories with you. And even meeting the fans, when I go to conventions, I hear these stories. It's like, and I hear from you guys how you your experiences of seeing Star Wars for the first time, and all stuff like that. That's what's wonderful, and it connects us together. But yeah, it is kind of a family atmosphere, because, and also it's just because you have to. I mean, you just kind of have to get along, and you have to get this project done. So it's like you're kind of shackled together for a while, for a few months or a few years, as you're working on this to get this done, and you're relying on each other, and you're supporting each other, sort of like a ball team, like a baseball team or something like that. You got to work together, and and it's hard. It's not easy. I mean, sure, there's all kinds of glitz and glamour after the fact when the film comes out in theaters and you're walking the red carpet. And I've walked the red carpet before. I've seen that side of things, but I've also, I'm a grunt in the trenches too, and I've seen what it takes to do it. And sometimes it's hours and hours and days of tedium and monotony and everything. But then when you're done, it's magic. It's movie magic. It's like, a woman carries a baby for 9 months, and it's not always easy, and it's not always pleasant. But when the baby's born, it's wonderful. It's a miracle. There's this new life there, and that's what we do when we're when we're acting, when we're creating effects and animation and everything, when we're doing voices, we're creating a new life. We're bringing you a new story. We're enriching the world, hopefully. So. I don't know if I've answered the question, but I've gotten all philosophical. Sorry.
Yeah, well, certainly teamwork makes the dream work. So, as a thank you and a little bit of a love letter to my co-presenter, David, here, I have hand-selected the final question, and I know David will be fascinated about this, and will certainly be asking you a lot more questions. So, now, don't let it be said that us at the Virtual Cantina don't do our research. We do. And we dug a little bit into Andrew's family history. And I think he knows where I'm going with this.
Oh, yes.
I understand that you're related to some famous individuals from American history. Can you share that with us?
I am indeed. I am related to Davy Crockett. Davy Crockett was my great, 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 great uncle. My cousin went and did the research and found it all long before Ancestry.com came around. It had always been rumored, but yes, he was my great, 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 great uncle, the legendary American pioneer. That's on my mother's side of the family. On my father's side of the family, I am related to the notorious outlaw Jesse James. So there's my dark side for you. So I was related to Jesse James, the infamous bank robber and train robber and murderer and all that. And we were always very quick to point out that is a relation by marriage, not by blood. So Davy Crockett is the blood relative, but yes, I'm related to both. So it's interesting. And I've always found that just a wonderful little bit of trivia that the light side and the dark side sort of cross right there at me. So.
Certainly do. We certainly do.
Yeah. Gee, well, I thought you were going to ask me about Howard the Duck for a minute there.
That's inside the Ark of the Covenant.
That was the first film I worked on, was Howard the Duck. Played a rocker. So it was also the first time I met this guy. So.
Oh, look at him.
Yes.
Two handsome men there. Look at that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Andrew, wonderful, wonderful time tonight talking to you.
Oh,
and
thank you. This was great.
Hopefully you enjoyed it. Little trip down memory lane for you, and get to get to know a little bit more about you, and hope our members enjoy that.
I hope so too.
one thing I want to just quickly mention, because we're all about giving back and charities, etc. Now, Andrew is a huge advocate of the Starlight Children's Foundation.
Yes.
And if any of you can help that cause, if anybody you feel that you'd like to give a donation to that particular charity, please do so on Andrew's behalf, on everybody's behalf, and we would appreciate that. Thank you. If you're able to,
you can go to starlight.org and find out all about them.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're in the Bay Area, which month is it next year, Andrew, that you're in Capitola?
That is in oh gosh, I gotta check. Let's see. Can't keep it all straight in my head here. I believe that's coming up in, I want to say February. Let me see here. Oops, wrong app. Okay, hang on. I always have to put everything in my calendar off. I will forget. Yeah. Talk amongst yourselves for a moment.
Yeah, if anybody can get over to Capitola for,
I don't even have it in my phone.
We'll post it on our pages.
I believe it's in February, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
Tim's still out there in the chat. Tim, tell us where it is. When it is.
Keep him organized, Tim. Keep him organized.
Okay. But if anybody actually wants to find out where I'm going to be, they can go to my website, candrewnelson.com, and go to the events page. And I list everything there. So it should be there. Or if it isn't, it will be by the time I get off this chat with you. I'll post it there.
And if you can get along to one of these conventions to meet Andrew, I highly recommend it. He's a wonderful guy to meet in person.
Is March the 6th.
Oh, March the 6th. Okay, there we go.
Great.
Thank you.
So anything else that you want to mention, Andrew, before we wrap up?
Yeah,
anything else coming
up?
If
you want to find me on social media, I am C. Andrew Nelson on Facebook. That's C with no period, just C. Andrew Nelson on Facebook. I am C. Andrew Nelson on Instagram, and I would give Twitter up, but I don't even go on Twitter. I just never got the hang of Twitter. But I'm also, of course, Aquatasy on YouTube, AQUATASY. And then go to the official candrewNelson.com website, and you can even send me an email from there if you want. So Would love to hear from everybody.
That's great. Thank you, Andrew. So before I wrap things up, David, anything from you?
This is like an episode of Columbo. It's like, oh yeah, one more thing. You know.
So just a few programming notes is we're going to take a little bit of a break from the speaker series next week for Thanksgiving, but we won't take a break from our Star Wars family because there are episodes of the Jedi Archives this Sunday. Virtual Cantina will have happy hour on November the 23rd, and there will be a special Virtual Cantina watch along as part of our countdown to the Book of Boba Fett. The 24th, we will be watching The Empire Strikes Back, the greatest of all Star Wars, if not all films in general. And then we will pick up with our speaker series again the following week on November 30th with Craig Miller, and wrap it up on December the 1st with Paul Hirsch. So please join us again.
Nice. Yes.
So we're really looking forward to the next couple of events that we have on the Virtual Cantina Network. But until that time, thank you again, Andrew, for joining us this evening and spending some wonderful time and memories that you have. And I just want to,
if people want to see me this weekend, this coming weekend, I will be at the Bakersfield Comic-Con in Bakersfield, California on Saturday, the 20th. And then Sunday, the 21st, I will be at the Dehan Toy Con up in Marysville, California, in California. And in Bakersfield, I'll be with Kevin Thompson is gonna be there. And then I'll be in Marysville with Alan Fernandez and see who else is gonna be there. I don't know, but we're gonna have a good time. John Davy from the old Shazam series is going to be there. Dangerous Bob, from prop maker extraordinaire from the Back to the Future movies. We're going to have fun. And Cooley Jackson, one of the original Solid Gold dancers, and a Power Ranger. We're all going to be there, having a wonderful, eclectic, good time.
well, like I said, if any of you can get along to any of these events, I highly recommend it. So to wrap things up, I just want to say one final word. Andrew, thank you. We were honored you could join us.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine. The Force is strong with you.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everyone who participated and joined in, and may the Force be with you all.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Blessings to you.